Okay guys, this is the one thing that's going to be on your final that is not new. Chapter 9 is supposed to be Algebra B, but for some reason when I got this final from the high school, this is on it. Now it's not a big deal, just a few questions and I'm going to teach it to you now, okay? First of all, this bottom equation should look familiar. We graphed quadratics, but we did not, we factored quadratics, but we did not graph. Okay, so the one I have above here is the standard form of a quadratic equation, and if we want to graph it, we just put it in two variables. The a, b, and c are just going to be the coefficients. So the a in this bottom equation is 1. The b is 4, and the c is -5. Okay, so if we're going to graph, we need to know a couple of things, and one of them is called the axis of symmetry. And the second thing is called the vertex. To find the axis of symmetry, we use a formula from the quadratic equation that is called minus b over 2a. So, if I want to find the axis of symmetry on this equation right here, I'll take the 4, and it says minus b, so minus 4 over 2a. So my a is 1, that's 2 times 1, so that is -4 over 2, and so my axis of symmetry is -2. And I'll show you what that looks like on a graph in a minute. Now to go to a vertex, we take the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is actually the x value of your vertex. And then to find your y, once we have the x, we just plug it in. So I'm going to go back to this equation, and I'm going to say 1 times my x, which is -2, parentheses squared, plus 4 times my x, which is still -2, minus b. If you're using a calculator and you put it in this way, you can just type it in and hit enter. If you're not using a calculator, and we'll go through the steps, we would do -2 quantity squared, so 1 times 4 plus, and I can go ahead and multiply this, -8 minus 5. 1 times 4 is just 4, so I have 4 plus -8 minus 5. Okay, so 4 plus -8, -4, -4 minus 5 is -9. So the vertex is -9. Okay, so if I translate that to a graph, okay, so same equation, y equals x squared plus 4x minus 5. Okay, we already know the vertex, which is -2, -9. Okay, so to get an idea of what the graph of a parabola looks like, we need to know a couple of things about it. One of them is this vertex. That's going to be a point on the line. Another thing is you just need to know what they look like. What do they generally look like? And so parabolas are, people will say they're a mix between a U and a V, but it's called a parabola. They can open up, they can open down. Okay, so that's what they look like. So that's kind of what we're going for. If I go back here, one thing to know about a parabola when we're graphing it is which way does it open. And so if this A is positive, the parabola is going to open up. So positive is going to open up. And if A is negative, it's going to open down. Okay, so back to the graph. Alright, so I know my vertex is negative 2, negative 9. So if I graph negative 2, negative 9, which is right there, I know generally the parabola is going to look something like this. When we call it a vertex or axis of symmetry, it's symmetrical and it's split up by the vertex. So while I just sketched that out, I know my parabola is roughly going to look something like that. So just knowing the vertex and knowing the direction could be enough to get by on graphing it if you're taking a standardized test, which you all will be. Now, to go further, one thing that we could do is we could factor this quadratic. And so if I factor it, that's going to be x plus 5 times x minus 1. Okay, you're going to review factoring during the week as well. And once I factor, if I take it further and solve it, this will tell me where the quadratic is going to cross the x-axis. So when I solve each one of these for x, I know it's going to cross the x-axis at 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Alright. I just realized a mistake I made. It's been a while since I've done some of this math, and I put right here that x equals 1, and I plotted it at negative 1, and this thing did not look very symmetrical. I'm a little rusty, but that goes there, and that will most definitely, still can't draw, give me an idea of what this thing is going to look like. Let's take 3 here, see if we can draw this thing close enough. Roughly my very ugly parabola, but it will give me an idea of what it looks like. Now, suppose you get an equation that you don't remember how to factor, okay, which is most definitely going to happen, and we'll do some more examples. But still finding the vertex is important, but if you need more information and can't factor and solve, you can do the rest of it by input-output. So if we start with the vertex, we could sit here and make a table. Well, I know my vertex is negative 2, 9. Negative 9, how about I plug negative 1 into my equation and see what kind of output I get. So negative 1 squared plus 4 times negative 1 minus 5. That's going to be 1 plus negative 4 minus 5. So 1 plus negative 4 is negative 3, minus 5 is negative 8. So I get the coordinate negative 1, negative 8 that I can graph. So that gives me, and then I can start seeing an idea, then I can plug in 0, and where does it fall? Then I can plug in 1, and I can start getting an idea, plug in negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, and get an idea of what this graph looks like. Okay, example 2, graphing quadratics. Y equals x squared minus 4x. Okay. Now, if you're looking at this in equation, if I go back to the standard form of a quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c, the first thing I'm going to try to find is the vertex. So I'm going to use the formula negative b over 2a. Okay. Now there's nothing in front here, so my a is 1. By the way, if you're wondering what c is, there's no constant, so your c would be 0 because there's nothing here. Okay? Now, pay attention to this. It's negative b, and your b is negative. So, like, if I were to substitute this in, it would be negative 4 over 2 times 1. So, what's a double negative? It's a positive. So, 4 over 2 times 1, which is 4 over 2. Okay? The x value of your vertex or the axis of symmetry is 2. Okay? Plugging back in to find the y value so we can know the entire coordinate, we're going to plug it into this equation. We'll take these things away because we don't need them. So I'm going to say parentheses 2 squared minus 4 times 2. 2 squared is 4, okay? 4 times 2 is 8, so I have 4 minus 8. My y value is negative 4. So I'm going to plot 2, negative 4, and that's my vertex. Now again, my A is positive, so this thing's going to open up this way, depending on how tough the question is. That may be all you need to pick the right graph on this test. Now you're going to get taught this more in depth next year when you go to Algebra B, but for right now we're just going to get you through this final. Okay, now if I were to factor x squared minus 4x, by the way, this can also be a review on factoring, which you're going to work on in iExcel this week, and you should have notes on that. But it's 2 terms. You're always supposed to take out a GCF first, so when we do that, I take out an x, and I get x minus 4. The only way this can factor is if it's a difference of squares, and so this is finished. If I wanted to find the zeros, I would set each part equal to 0. So x equal to 0, x minus 4 equal to 0. This is already solved. This is going to be 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, that's probably enough. It's a really bad drawing there. Probably enough to get an idea of what the parabola looks like. For some reason, I can't do anything but make it a V, when again, they're supposed to look something like this. Okay, and again, if we still needed more, which you probably won't, you could do input, output, pick an input of 3, where does it fall, pick an input of 4 or 5. But if you can factor it and find the vertex, that's going to be enough. Okay, last example, and I'll round this up and then wrap this up, and then you can practice it on iExcel, is if I give you an equation where A is negative. Okay, so my really rough notes that you should probably take notes on this and use when you take your test. But the only difference in the one that I'm doing now is right here is the parabola is going to open down because A is negative, okay? I'm still going to find the vertex. I'm going to say negative B over 2A. My B is negative 5, so negative 5 over 2A, which is 2 times negative 1. My A is negative 1. This is going to be 5 over negative 2, and if I divide this out, negative 2.5 is the x value of my vertex. Now when you're substituting this in to get your y, whether if you're using a calculator or doing it by hand, put the negative 2.5 in parentheses because it's going to be quantity squared right here. Okay, now that negative holds out front. That's going to be 5 times negative 5 times negative 2.5. All these negatives here are probably going to make some of you miss it. Like you're not going to miss it because you don't understand. Okay, 2.5, negative 2.5 squared is 6.25. Okay, but then there's this negative out here, so it ends up being negative. When I squared it, that one became positive, but I have a negative out front. When I multiply this together, 5 times 2.5 is 12.5, so a negative and a negative is a positive, so plus 12.5 minus 6. I hope you have a calculator here because this is kind of nasty, but then it looks like this is not going to be too bad. So negative 6.25 plus 12.5 minus 6 comes out to 0.25. So negative 2.5 and 0.25 is my vertex. So I'm going to go over negative 2.5, and I'm going to go up just a little. And again, this thing opens down. Okay? Now, if we're going to factor this, if you remember, factoring is easier when A is positive. So I'm going to take this equation right here and multiply everything by negative 1. which is really going to change the signs. It's not going to change the equation. It's still going to open down because that's your originals, but I'm going to make everything positive by multiplying everything by -1 so I can factor it. Now if I factor this, that's going to be x plus 2 times x plus 3. Okay, set each part equal to 0. By the way, this can be a little bit of review of factoring as well, factoring and solving, which are both going to be on there. So I'm going to get x equals -2 for the first one, x equals -3 for the second one. And this thing's going to be really tight, because right there's -2, right there's -3, and then it's going to open down. I can do input output to get more of it, but again, if we're taking a standardized test, we'll probably be fine if we can factor, solve, and find the zeros. So that is how you roughly graph a quadratic. Okay, if you need more help on it, I'll be glad to help you. I hope you find this relatively easy, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.